Hello, Joe. I'm Detective Warrant, and today I'm speaking to you because some interesting things have come our way. And one of your cellmates by the last name Nagari, sound familiar? Yeah. What about him? Well, he states that you have confided in him. You have confided in him in reference to the killings, the 10 killings. You have a list, and we have some evidence that states 10 particular people in some interesting detail. It's just words. It's just words. That's all it is. I don't admit to anything. I didn't do anything. I'm here against my will from you guys because you're claiming I did something that I didn't. Well, Joe, why would you admit to this to your cellmate? Why would you brag about this? I didn't brag about anything. I didn't brag about a thing. And you guys got to get your head on straight because I didn't do any such thing. Joe, we have him telling you we have letters in your home. Letters saying what exactly? Saying how you have had sexual relationships forced upon women. That was part of their fetish. I was doing what they wanted to do. You got nothing because I did nothing. Hello, everybody. This is Greg Stewart, and welcome to Criminal Psychology Files. Today's story is on Joseph Naso, also known as the Alphabet Killer, and we're going to do a deep dive into this man's psychology in reference to how he utilized photography to connect to people, how he used his trade. Now, this was someone's father, this was someone that was trusted in the community, and yet he was out there using his schemes of, oh, you can model, or can I take a picture, or even stalk you. That's right. Because no one would question someone with an actual camera if they're pointing themselves towards a building. If they're pointing themselves towards a building, you might just believe I'm just getting caught in the picture. Unlike someone with a cell phone today that would just basically do this and eyeball you from that way. You can get away with a camera. You could say I'm bird looking, or I'm looking at that building, I'm in architecture. So he knew how to get his fantasies going by taking pictures of you, by learning your routine. You're over here at 3 o'clock. You're back over here at 5 p.m. You drive this. This was brilliant in reference to stalking someone because you had no clue you were being looked upon by this sadistic monster. So we're going to get into this deep dive right now in reference to Joseph Naso. And you're also going to hear excerpts of his actual journey. He actually had put his thoughts on paper. His sick, sadistic fantasies come to life in the few pages that they found from his home in reference to his mind on paper. So we're going to see how his thoughts work, how the lettering is in reference to observing, because you can see a lot, you can connect a lot by observing someone's handwriting. That's right. They call this handwriting analysis. So you're going to get a bird's eye view in reference to how someone goes from a psychopath with narcissistic tendencies by just viewing this handwriting analysis. Coming up right now, the Joseph Naso Alphabet Killer Psychological Profile. All right, so let's get started to this story. But before we do, if you can hit that like button, subscribe, share, and comment in reference to this criminal psychology file. So let's begin. Now, who exactly is Joseph Naso? Joseph Naso was born in Rochester, New York at the year of 1934. And during that time, as he was growing up in Rochester, Joe was like anyone else, a normal kid, a normal person. When did these tendencies first show themselves? Now, in his youth, as far as growing up, There's no real indicators, meaning there's no real records that show an abusive household. However, he did end up joining the military. He would be based from going to New York to California. He got married, he had a son, and his son was basically diagnosed with schizophrenia. So, did this put something into his thoughts? Did he see something into in the military there? We will never really know where this stemmed from, which is a good thing because it always should keep you aware that despite the persona that people show you, always still look for tidbits. And that's exactly what happened here. Joe got into photography, and maybe this was the beginning already. He had the thoughts because there was a premeditation in reference to any kind of thing that we do, meaning there's always a fantasy. Except the problem with fantasies is that they never live up to the fantasy in reference to the reality. So when we move forward, we look at Joe taking photos, doing pictures, and things of that nature. And when you take a picture, as we said earlier, you can start fine tuning details. Details in reference to your fantasies coming to life. Now, Joe became big in reference to making these fantasies come to life once he moved to California. Now, he was married for 18 years, and his wife and him divorced, and she moved to California as well. So Joe decided to pick up and go to California, even though him and his wife are no longer. Now, this could be in reference to their schizophrenic son. There's no real clear details there. But where did this stem from? Now, Joe never admitted to the alphabet killings in Rochester, New York, but he did have a history in reference to always being crazy or weird or eccentric Joe when they lived in Rochester. And people do tend to start with something. Now, maybe he did do those killings in Rochester, but as he got to California, he started killing adult women, if you will. And maybe there's some shame in reference to the children. Who knows? But they do tend to link towards Joe during the years that he did live in Rochester. Fingers do point to Joe in reference to those crimes, though to this day, those particular crimes in Rochester, New York, are still unsolved. They're cold cases. So, moving into California, Joe, how does he lure these people? What did he do? Joe, on all counts, was a likable person to people. He would go around with his camera, and when he would get you to do pictures with him, when he would get you to connect with him, he would say, you know what's a real end that nobody's doing that's really provocative? Showing people in suffering, in misery. Can you act? Did you want to be an actor? And they would eat this up. Hey, I'm finally becoming significant. Maybe their long dream was to, because these were, adults, these were people that were really pretty or people that were intellectual, maybe people that wanted certain needs met. So Joe is meeting that need. And when you gave him feedback, he knew he was in. He knew what impulses, what buttons to push to get the best out of you. So he would get these individuals to pose for him, pose as if they were dead, pose as if they were hurt. And this was also him, as he would take these photos, go home and develop them. He was already reliving the fantasy of what's to come. He was already premeditating, is a better word, of getting ready to get his chutzpah, to get his energy, to get his mindset. And the more you do something, if you say it, whether it's positive or negative, the more you reinforce it, the more eventually you're going to do it. I see this in my work all the time. No matter what the subject is, the more someone gives some thought in reference to, I'm not going to do it, I'm not going to do it, they're really telling themselves, I'm going to do it eventually, especially if they use the word yet. Yet is always an indicator of something that you plan and will eventually do. So now, fast forward to Joe. He's going to California, and all these things are happening. They're finding the bodies imposed in odd and weird positions. And for the longest time, Joe, nobody's even thinking his way. No one's even seeing him this way. So how does Joe Naso eventually get caught? All right, so before we go into how Joseph Naso was officially caught, let's talk about the victims. Roxine Rogash, who was from Fairfax, Marin County. Well, they found her strangled and posed. And familiar with what Joseph would do when he would request you to basically pose for him while he takes a photo. He'd put you in a position, which wouldn't be surprising if that's what he did here. He met her for the first time. He said, "You know what? I'd like to take a couple photos with you. And would you mind posing like this?" And Roxanne was 18 years of age. So, not seasoned in life or able to really sense a weirdo, especially here comes someone, look, here's my card. I'm a professional photographer. I do freelance work. So, hey, you know what? This area is not really speaking to me. Would you mind if we go down to this other area and I do some photos there? And there is where it happened. There is where the strangulation would occur. It was very desolate. And then he dumped her body after posing her in a certain position. And he was able to take photos and probably do even crazy comparisons in reference to what I did when she was alive and got her to do and what I finished with, because this was the mind of this sadistic monster. So that happened in 1977. Moving forward to the year 1978. Now, who knows what happened between those months? Because later on, you'll find out later there are more killings opposed to the 3 or 4 individuals that were documented in reference to finally Joe. And you'll see it in an upcoming series episode on Hulu, or check your local cable or satellite providers in reference to the episode coming up in reference to the live interview of Joe Naso, in reference to him coming out now recently and finally admitting the truth not too long ago in reference to killing 20 plus women. So the next victim, by coincidence, has the same name of one of the little children or child that was killed in Rochester, New York during the time that Joseph Naso was there. That's right. During the time Joseph Naso was there, this young girl by the name of Carmen Colon was killed by someone that is considered to this day a cold case crime, but they are linking it recently to Joe, though not admitted by Joe. But coincidentally, this woman has the same name as that first victim. Now, when Carmen's body was discovered, it wasn't as posed at this point. They were seeing it this, was he rushed or was he just more brazen in his way in reference to how he would kill? But this is also where the formation, if you will, of the alphabet killer was coming into fruition in reference to how things happened in Rochester and opposed to what's happening now. And what that means is he was matching initials RR, CC, PP, TT. So the way he was doing this in reference to how he killed, people was referencing that this is like an alphabetical thing going on. And so that's why they gave him the nickname, the Alphabet Killer. So he does this, and then years go by before they finally find his next victim. Now, you're wondering, from 1978, when I say years gone by, to 1993, which is in this turn the third person that is connected to these alphabet killings, Pamela Parsons. And she was a sex worker, and she was actually known to Naso, which was a slight connection of making him a suspect at this point, but they just didn't have enough to go on. It was like, well, we think it's him, but we're not exactly sure, because he could just be a trick. And so therefore, nothing really to go on. And then the next person was Tracy Taylor, a year later, 1994, who was backed into the original format of what happened to Roxanne Rogic in 1977. She was strangled and she was posed in a similar position to her body, which indicated that maybe these dumpings, these killings, this MO is connected to this alphabet killer, and we believe we have a serial killer because this is not just random. It's something that's happening, and there's too many red flags that indicate that there's similarities, and that's exactly what was happening here. So again, how did he get caught? Well, Joseph Naso was known for petty theft. He was known to do things and connect in ways to steal and rob people, break-ins, but something that would keep him under the radar that people would not notice it was him. So in time, Naso, his crimes would catch up to him. He eventually would get caught for theft. And during that time, they just felt weird. The authorities felt weird about Joe. They were like, you know what? Now that we have him in jail, let's see if there's other things we can get on him. Not really putting together the murders at this point, though there was some suspicion in areas in reference to in the investigation in other departments. But let's just take a look at his home. When they go in there, they were able to find photos, obviously being a photographer. They were able to, nothing that really showed the killings, but photos of individuals taking photos but in positions, but they wasn't dead. It was like they said, okay, you can take a photograph of me like this. So we had those photos, and then they came across his journal. Then they came across all these letters and notes that he created in reference to reinforcing the killings, but not totally indicating the person's name. And there are writings, there are these journals, I should say, that if you look on Reddit, if you look up and you want to see the handwritten notes of Joseph Naso, you can do so. And you could see how one letter in particular really stood out to me in reference to the work I do, because it was important for us in the behavioral work I did to study handwriting analysis. And there's one letter in particular where everything is capitalized, where he's shouting out, where he's making sure he's heard even within himself, and the authority behind it, the power. I am powerful, with these high, bold, capitalized words coming to life in these letters, and then emphasizing as it gets sloppy. It was almost like he was reliving while he was writing the fantasy, the moment. You could see the letters kind of slant off. They're not even straight in reference to the words that he's saying. And that tells you lack of structure within himself. That what are you thinking outside of writing these letters? Why is it slanting off? And when we do behavioral work and you look over and you study IQing in reference to someone, well, he's creating these things. He's reliving that moment, those actual memories by his words tinkering off to that side, because that is the memory side. And that's where the letters were flowing towards, which means while he was writing, he was really getting in here. He was like, I did this and she was like that, and though she was worried about this and I just took control like that, ha ha, laugh laugh. Those are not construction of something he wants to do. That's something that he did do. That's an actual memory of the sadistic bastard. So these were the letters that they were able to find. And even behind bars, even going to court, even saying like, okay, you killed people, you have the names of these four and we're linking them to you. Your letters at least indicate 4 to 6 victims of what you did. And he denied. There were interviews, which, like I said earlier, of these up and coming series that's coming up. And even in that, he just tries to manipulate, but he also shows his composure. When the journalist is trying to bait him, he still stays cool, calm, and collective. Watch the demeanor. You can actually see clippings now online, because I can't show them here because of copyright, but I'd love you to check them out, to investigate and observe his personality traits, from his tonality. Here's a little tidbit. When your tone stays in one area and it doesn't raise, You're still in control of your mind. You're not letting emotions get the best of you. Once that cadence raises up, once that volume raises, well, then the person is no longer even hearing you. They might hear your tone and realize you're arguing with them. But once that tone raises up, you're more into how you want to picture, hear, or feel the outcome. And he stayed composed. It was as if he knew when he was being baited, you're not going to get the best of me. And he was like, well, Joe, they found this and that. And you could hear the journalist, and he goes, well, that's what they say. That's your opinion. That's your thought. Never broke that line. And that's scary when you have that kind of psychology, when you're a narcissist to that level, where you've trained yourself to believe that what you're doing or how you can control, that's a mind control like no other. And that brings out the pure evil of this man. Now, another thing, when victims were later spoken and how this came out was he told his prison mate, Nagira was his last name, I believe. And he said to him, you know, did you do it, Joe? And he goes, you know, they're thinking four. They hear my list of my top 10. They wasn't even really my top 10. They were in my 26, 27 killings, but they were 10 that were just coming to mind now. But I don't even know if I would list them at that. It just happened to be in one of the letters they found. There were many more, as if he was bragging about it, as if maybe he even knows at the age of 77, 78, I'm coming to the end of my life. Maybe it's time to take credit for this, to live my legacy, so to speak. So he comes clean. This inmate comes out, Jagira, and he emphasizes this. And then, boom, it explodes. There's a TV series on it now. He finally comes out into the media. Yes, I did do this. And now they're pinpointing, because of the way murders were in that area of certain areas in California with no names, but murders during that time where he said he was there, they're linking certain individuals to that timeline, so to speak. So this is indicating, even though he's not coming clean, because Joe has to be in control. Joe has to put it out the way he wants. Did you do it at this point because it shows that you were here, Joe, and this person just happened to die there? I don't know, did I? You see, his narcissistic ways, his being in control, even being a photographer, being in control of how I want the picture to be, how I want the picture to become. Hence the programming of posing the person, also the premeditation. Would you mind posing like this? Would you mind acting like that? Would you mind doing this? All comes into fruition in reference to the sickness of the control of this person and the fantasy that he's creating. So that's what we have. I would highly recommend utilize this to get the psychological profile through the criminal files that we discussed today, and utilize this as a stepping point, and then observe yourself. September 13th is when this series is going to be coming out. Look for it in reference to Joe Naso and the interview with the journalist who, and I get it, the journalist has to get him to rise up, but when you rise yourself up, even as a journalist, you are not in your mindset. You are now playing to him, because you're being very emotional about it, and you have to find a way to step back and get logical. Now, I get it. Maybe his training as a journalist has said, I need to do this to get a reaction. You see it in all kinds of commentary today. But sometimes we take it a step further as journalists that are out there, and they can't get back to logic, and that's when criminal minds like this win. So observe, notice which way his head is going. Go back to the IQing like we showed in other videos, but Google it, put it up, put an IQing chart up. Watch the way, even if his eyes don't move, but his head tilts a certain way, that's a form of IQing. He's just using different body language by moving his head. Does he ever submit? Does he ever fall into guilt? No, but thinking doesn't mean guilt. Thinking means that he wants to still do other things, unless he's remembering about something that the journalist or someone brings up. Then he's going here to remembering. And if you observe the IQing, you will see this so clear. in reference to his narcissistic, psychopathic behavior. There is no guilt whatsoever. This is just another moment in the end of his life where he gets to be in control and see that he's significant, that even if you hate me, I'm valued because you're tuning into me, which then turns, I'm still controlling my element. So this is the story of Joseph Naso, the alphabet killer here, meaning the letters RR, CC, TT, and so on. Very similar to what happened in New York. Everybody starts somewhere. He had a foundation. The belief is that he started there. He lived in Rochester, took it here into California, and now here he is coming undone for his greater good. Don't let him fool you. This is for his greater good to stay in the public eye and be known as the most prolific serial killer of his time. So this is Greg Stewart with Criminal Psychology Files. Please, once again, smash that like button, subscribe, share, and comment, because your words are helping us grow more and more every day. Until the next time, have a great day or evening wherever you are.